And we are live. Hello everyone, how are we doing on this fine Friday? It's the weekend soon. You still have one more stream to survive and then you can go out, have drinks, be merry, go to the cinema. I don't know what you have planned for this weekend. But in the meantime, the final stretch. News review. You see it, we're in English because we swapped for this week. Normally it's on Tuesday. Today it's the news release normally is on Tuesday. This week it's on Friday because I had a reguesser on Monday. Well, I was going to tell you something else that was absolutely interesting, I can guarantee you, but I forgot, so it will come back. Like we're not even like 2 minutes in the stream, I'm already forgetting things. Like, it's terrible to get old. Don't do it. I don't recommend it. But yeah, in the meantime, on the program today, what are we going to talk about, chat, in terms of news? We're going to talk about a bit the follow-up of discussion we've had last week on the concept of European preference, which is like the new buzzword that we're hearing a lot in Brussels and beyond. So the principle that EU companies should have preferential treatment, priority contracts in a number of sectors. So there's there's been some backlash internally in the Commission and from some member states and beyond on the idea. So we'll read a bit about that. We'll talk about one of the latest drama around the Board of Peace, which is like so Trump's kind of alternative UN that he's trying to create, to which he invited a bunch of member states and von der Leyen, and most member states do not want to attend this thing because it's a competition with the UN. We'll discuss it. And the Commission sent someone to attend to the inauguration of that Board of Peace, and so there's been quite a backlash over the past few days against the Commission for sending someone to the inauguration of that Board of Peace. So we'll read a bit about that. And to finish, sorry, I have that cough. To finish, we will talk about the Capital Markets Union. So it's something that we've discussed in the past a little bit. It's an old idea. There's a new push around it, and Politico happened to have just made like an article to sum up the main issues around that topic. So I figured that since it's a tiny bit lighter this week, in terms of big news, it was a good opportunity to do a bit of a dive on that particular topic that is like a key demand of the Draghi report, an area where you could see some of the new multi-speed Europe with groups of countries implementing a policy ahead of others. So we will read about that, and as usual, if there are other things you want to discuss, well, you have 10 fingers, a keyboard, and a chat, and well, you just have to type and we'll discuss. So yeah, that's the program for today. I'm putting my tea aside so I don't burn myself. That would be much unfortunate. Alright, so that can go away. I'm just removing my various notifications that just popped up. Don't mind me. Alright, I'm all yours. And on this note, let's start with the continuation of the discussion. I'm putting myself a bit more in the center. Continuation of the discussions on the European preference, which is like a big request historically from France that is increasingly being taken on board. I mean, the principle now is pretty much acted and accepted among EU institutions and members. The question is, how far do you go with that principle of European preference? And the Commission is just preparing a text, so the Industrial Accelerator Act, which is supposed to support the industry and which is supposed to include some level of European preference. That's why being piloted by the French Commissioner, Stéphane Séjourné, who proposed apparently like quite extensive version of that European preference, and so it created a bunch of backlash even inside the Commission and also from elsewhere, and they got postponed, so we'll read a bit about it. And I was going to say something. No, that's fine. All right, so von der Leyen's industry master plan runs into trouble. Non-European Commission departments, so the equivalent of ministries, panned the Industrial Accelerator Act, leaving the landmark proposal in a tough spot. So this mandate is a lot about reindustrialization, and so that law, the Industrial Accelerator Act, is supposed to be like the cornerstone of the push of the European institution to give some peps to the European industry. Ursula von der Leyen's master plan to revive European industry has hit a roadblock after meeting strong internal pushback from within the European Commission. The Industrial Accelerator Act, a centerpiece of the Clean Industrial Act, so the Clean Industrial Act, it's kind of the Green Deal 2.0. So the Green Deal was the huge package of green laws adopted during the previous mandate. Since then, there's been a bit of a backlash, a green backlash against this type of policies, and so the Commission, with the member states, kind of rebranding its green policies, also deregulating them, etc., but repackaging it as an economic policy to say, okay, well, actually, we still want to do like the objective to decarbonate, to reach the 100% reduction of gas emission by 2050, but it's something that must accompany our economic efforts to revive the industry. And so, how do we help our industries to become greener? That's kind of the rebranding of the Green Deal, and so the Industrial Accelerator Act is part of that package of law to go more on the economic/industrial side with a bit of green inside. So a centerpiece of the Clean Industrial Deal, unveiled by the Commission chief a year ago, faced criticism from 9 policy departments after it was circulated for feedback over the past week. So usually what happens when you have when the Commission prepares a law, a directive or anything, before it's published, so you will have one department, one DG, which is the equivalent of ministries, that will be in charge of it. So it will be the one drafting the paper, drafting the law, preparing everything, etc. So they will be the leader. But after a while, they have to circulate that the paper they have, the law they have drafted, to the rest of the Commission, so that other departments that may be impacted or interested in that law can give feedback. Say, okay, this. So in this case, for instance, you do something about the Clean Industrial Deal. Well, you will request maybe feedback from the trade department. You will request feedback from growth, which is the economy department, etc., etc. So you get all the other parts of the Commission that can be interested in that file, and that also represent different sensitivities around that topic. Because of course, if you are the part of the Commission that deals with trade, you're not going to think necessarily the same things as the part of the Commission that deals with economy, the one that deals with environment, etc., etc. And so there they give feedback, and so there's always a bit of internal clash where each DG is trying to push its interpretation of what the law should be inside it. And so when they circulated, you had 9 DGs who said, well, actually, we don't like what the thing you've done. I hope they're only against it because the plan needs to be changed, not in principle. I mean, again, like the idea of European preference is for the most part accepted. Like in the current context, the idea of, okay, we need to give some level of priority to European companies in some sectors, that is relatively accepted. There's a bit of consensus reached there. The question is then, how do you define European preference and how far do you go with it? Like if you listen to the French, they will tell you it has to be full absolute European preference, meaning that it's only really European companies that can be beneficiary of that, and it must concern almost the entire economy. Like I'm exaggerating, but that's kind of like one extreme part of the debate, which would be mostly the French. And then you would have other parts coming from, I don't know, the Nordic countries, for instance. So those who are historically more liberal, more free market, will say no. Actually, European preference should be only some particular sector that are particularly strategic, etc., etc. And actually, it should not be like a fully European. It should be like just a relatively some quota, because we have companies that use components from all around the world, etc. So we don't want them to be excluded. We don't want like to be to face retaliation from other countries, etc. So even if the principle is accepted, what you put behind the word, how far you go with it, that's where the fight is right now. And so within the Commission, of course, depending on where you come from, that's going to be, you have a different opportunities. Like for instance, if you are DigiTrade, so the part of the Commission that deals with, that negotiates trade deal, the idea of European preference is not really their stuff. It's not really something that they are quite keen on, because their very function is to negotiate trade deal and to enable goods and services to freely flow between countries, to try to negotiate things. So they know that if there is European preference, partners will be fighting against, etc., etc. So it's really how far you push it. It's fine to apply EU preference, but on a free market basis. No force project like the FCAS jet that ends up failing. I mean, it's completely different. Like the FCAS, it's the SCAF is the project of common jet fighter between France, Germany, and Spain that is on the verge of collapse, but that has nothing to do with EU preference there. Inside Invents is scaling up ones that are proven to well. The problem is that sometimes, I mean, that's kind of the problem of the chicken and the egg. For a company, for a European product to meet success, to be deemed viable, they need to get contracts first, because then it feeds it gives them the opportunity to scale up, to push their product further, etc., etc. But if they don't get the product in the first place, well, if they can't get like any guarantee regarding the market, then they never have the basis to compete with the bigger guys. So you have a bit of a chicken and egg. What do you put first? Do you first give the contracts to guarantee some contracts to European companies so that then they can put their products on the market and grow faster? Or do you wait for them to first provide things that are equally or better than non-European stuff, and then support them further? The two are a bit linked with each other. And so you have, again, depending on where you stand on the European preference, you will insist more on whether it's the egg or the chicken that must go first. But the SCAF jet is a completely different thing. It's defense contract. It's completely outside the question of EU preference there. There's plenty of European product, but the tender regulation. So you have you're right. Then you have the public tender thing, which is a different file, which is in preparation. We know that the Commission is working on rules for public tenders. So the contracts that states or countries are putting under when they need stuff, and we know there's also going to be a level of European preference there as part of simplification, etc. So you have the part on public tenders rules We know the Commission is probably going to propose something next year, if I recall correctly. But there, it's more a matter of industrial policy, pure industrial policy. Let's continue. This unusually broad criticism risks delaying the plan's presentation, officially scheduled for February 26, for the third time, leaving the Brussels executive scrambling to present a coherent overall strategy to boost the EU economic competitiveness in time for a leaders' summit on March 19th and 20th. The Commission declined to comment, blah 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 blah. Pressure is currently building against the Commission's broader trade and economic agenda, with US President Donald Trump's aggressive tariff policy that just got censured by the Supreme Court, actually. The US Supreme Court just declared half an hour ago that the tariff he pronounced back in April last year were illegal. And an export glut from China, both posing an existential threat to Europe's industry. The backlash also deals a blow to Industry Commissioner Stéphane Séjourné, the top-ranking French official in the Commission, who is directly responsible for the legislation. He's pushing very strong interpretation of the European preference, and so of course the fact that 3 times in a row his plans are being pushed back on, that makes him weaker as well. The bill would seek to give European-made products an advantage in public procurement and other publicly funded programs in energy-intensive industries, net-zero technologies, and automotive. Importantly, it would define terms such as local content requirement or green steel that cascade through other strategic legislation. Okay, so you define the framework, and then all the laws that derive from this would have to apply the core principles. So that means that if you put ambitious rules on green steel, local content, etc., in the IAA, that means that all the laws then that will be based or linked to that as part of the Clean Industrial Act will also then have to respect the content of that law. So it is an important piece of legislation because it will impact many others. Where was I? There. One controversial aspect of the regulation is who should be considered a strategic partner in procurement, with Britain and Japan lobbying for a broad scope to include countries that have free trade deals with the EU. Another is its intent to reverse engineer Chinese-style forced joint ventures, just as EU heavyweight led by Germany and Italy press Brussels to cut red tape and keep trade channel open. So there you have 2 things. First, the notion of trusted partners. Like I said, once you go beyond just the principle of European preference, the interpretation of it is very different. Like I said, French will tend to have a purist, let's say, kind of interpretation. Only pure European companies can apply, while the Nordics, the German, will have a broader interpretation of it. And for instance, we know that the Nordic and the Germans are pushing the idea, it's a bit absurd to an extent, to say, well, actually, it should not be like made in Europe, but made with Europe. In the sense that, well, if the products come from Europe or from some countries that we consider to be very close to us, that we have free trade agreement with, for instance, like Britain, like Japan, well then they should be able to benefit from that. They should be considered equal to European products. The idea there is to take into account the fact that you may have some supply chains that are spread across different countries, including outside the EU, and most likely as well to avoid backlash from countries the EU has free trade agreement with, because the idea, one of the clause of free trade agreement often is to open the public procurement market. That means that companies can freely have access and apply to European public procurements and vice versa. And so they're afraid that, well, if suddenly we do the EU preference, maybe that could go against the terms of the trade deal. Maybe they would take countermeasures, so prevent European companies from competing in Japanese or British contracts. So it's about a balancing act with those you have trade agreement with. And the second one, I don't recall if we read the article when it was first announced, is okay. One issue that we have is that when you have non-European companies that invest in Europe, that makes that they're so big that then they kill the local competition, and they don't share the knowledge and everything. So they're taking inspiration a bit from what is taking place in China, meaning that in China, if oui, on est en anglais. On a inversé cette semaine. Comme il y avait Eurogazer lundi, le français était le mardi, et aujourd'hui on est en anglais. Désolé. Sorry, just doing a explanation quickly in French. Where was I? I was talking about... Yeah, so in China today, it's been the case for years, if you want to invest in China, you want to open a company in China, you can't just open a factory and that's it. You buy a factory, it's under your name, etc. That's not happening. That's not the way it happens in China. What happens is that China says, okay, if you want to be able to build a factory in my country, well, actually, you can't do it on your own. You have to partner with a Chinese company. And so you have to do 50-50 or 49-51 with the Chinese company. That way, well, the thing that you're doing there also benefits my companies that will then benefit from sharing knowledge, etc., potentially some IP and everything. So it's kind of a way of forcing foreign investment to also push up local companies. For instance, and that then can have longer term consequences, because then the companies that are part of the partnerships with the non-Chinese companies, well, they're picking up techniques, they're picking up IP, they're picking up knowledge on how to do the stuff that their partners know how to do, and then later on to do their own thing. So typically, for instance, in the automotive industry, Germans built a lot of built factories, invested heavily in China. They had to make partnerships with Chinese companies. And what we saw is that over time, the Chinese companies acquired more and more knowledge, to the point where I say, well, actually now I know almost as much as the German company, and so I will do my own fully Chinese thing and compete then with the German cars, and then that feeds into the China then becoming going on the offensive with Chinese product that will kind of build on the backs to an extent of non-Chinese know-how. So that's kind of the idea, and so the Europeans are thinking about doing something similar in Europe in a way to say, well, if foreigners want to push in Europe, then we're maybe doing the same would allow us to support our industry, etc., etc. Which is definitely not like, let's say, the traditional EU approach of doing things. Rather the contrary. So if the Industry Act leads to an inward turn on industrial policy, because that is in essence a protectionist policy, that would run counter to von der Leyen's drive to close out trade deals with the Latin American Mercosur bloc, India and Australia, which is indeed like kind of in a way a contradictory or approach, in the sense that on the one hand, Europe, due to the not so good state of its economy, sorry, I'm removing stuff from my mic, It's annoying me. I don't even know why I'm keeping this because like it's this mic that is working. I don't know why I keep this. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So given the state of the economy, and notably in terms of heavy industry, there is a willingness to go more towards some level of protectionism. In the sense, okay, we need to protect more our market from unfair competition, whether from the Chinese, from the Americans, from others. So we need to give advantages to our companies on the European market. Even if those advantages can be a bit artificial, in the sense that, oh, well, we're guaranteeing you part of the contracts, we're guaranteeing that if someone wants to build a factory in Europe, they have to partner up with you, etc., etc. So that's one objective, one end of the scale. But then externally, the EU wants to do as much trade agreement as it can. So going more on the openness of the market, because, well, we have the Americans going rogue, we have the Chinese trying to conquer markets, and so we need to be able to diversify our economy and give us and give our companies more markets to potentially conquer. So let's say internally you're going protectionist, but then outside you're going open market. So it's a bit of a tough combination to keep, because of course the countries you will want to make free trade deals with, they will say, well, I mean, you want me to open my market, but look, you're closing down yours. My companies will not be able to compete with to compete fairly with yours. Blah 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 blah. So you have a tension there. Did I see the Supreme Court? Yeah, I saw it. Indeed, the Supreme Court did cancel the Trump tariff from last year, but we'll see what is the consequence of that. Most likely Trump will find other tools to impose tariff that might be a bit more complicated to deploy than what he did before, etc., etc. But like, I don't expect suddenly Trump to fully abandon his tariff. That's kind of his go-to instrument, like it's a cornerstone of his policy. So he will do it, but differently from now. But it is a bit of it's weakening him, because he lost against a court that is mostly Republican, from also people from his side. So that's, in a way, that's a bit it's good, because it shows that the checks and balance of the US system still work, meaning that if Trump is doing an overreach, even an institution that is controlled by the Republican is still able to tell him, well, no, actually you fucked up on that, you're not allowed to do this. So it's giving some reassurance on this. I'm not 100% sure, but they would cancel only tariff based on the 1977 law. I didn't read the detail. I just saw the headline and everything. So indeed, there's the law of 1977. That does not mention tariff as things that can be done in the case of emergency, but they are that can be done unilaterally by the president. But then Trump says that there is another law, I think, from the 70s as well, that has been used several times by other presidents to take actions in case of emergency, which traditionally has been used to impose sanctions, but that Trump would then repurpose to impose tariff instead. At least that's the legal theory that he is pushing. There. For example, yes, they're not cancelled, because the thing that is cancelled in the ruling is the blanket tariff. The fact that you say everything is put on the tariff. Like default, I'm putting a default tariff on everything. That's illegal. But if you do something that is sectorial, you say, okay, that product specifically, I'm putting a tariff for reason X, Y, Z. That's possible. Like that's why the steel tariff, there's 2 or 3 like big tariff that will remain in application because they are sectorial. It's only a tariff that were announced back in April during what he called the Liberation Day that were like I'm putting blanket tariff on everything and everyone by default. That's illegal, but the targeted one remain, yes. And so we'll see if through that other law from the 70s, I think, he can reintroduce those base level tariff for everyone. But the interesting bit from what I read quickly from an article is that now that the tariff from April have been made illegal, well, that means that the companies that have paid tariff since April can ask to be reimbursed, technically. And so we can expect potentially a wave of American companies, because when you have tariff, it's not like the Europeans who pay the tariff, it's the company that is importing the stuff that pays the tariff, so American companies. So you can expect American companies to potentially sue the government to be reimbursed of the billions of dollars they got taxed because of those tariffs that are now illegal, and so to get back the money that they paid for the past year, basically. Of course, if Trump then used another tool to reimpose the tariff, then you reset the game, but you reset the game only from the date where the new tool is deployed. Everything that was before, that's cancelled according to the Supreme Court. So we'll see if American companies will go, and how many of them will go to seek reimbursement, because they could also be afraid that if they seek reimbursement of tariff, which is something that is very dear to Trump, they could face a backlash from him. They could say he could call them, you're going against America's interest. I'm going to screw you over on other things. So we'll have to see, but it's going to be interesting to see the reaction, notably in the US, on this. All right, let's continue. Sorry, just quickly checking something. Boom. Boom. Alright. Sorry about that. Alright, let's continue. So defining the scope of trusted partners is the main point currently under debate, said the Commission official. A draft of the Industrial Accelerator Act, obtained by Politico last week, states that made in EU should refer to content originating from the EU and the European Economic Area, meaning from Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. So those are countries that are not part of the EU, but that are integrated de facto into the European single market. So they apply EU law, they pay into the EU budget, and in exchange they benefit from the single market. So they would get the perks of accessing the European preference because they are part of the EU single market and respect EU law and everything. However, the EU executive also wants to identify trusted partners whose manufacturing should be deemed equivalent to Union origin content. Commission departments have different views on how to define trusted partners, mirroring the wider debates in EU capitals. DigiTrade, so the part that deals with trade, leans towards including all countries with which the EU has an FTA, so a free trade agreement. Canada, the UK, Japan, all those, probably because we have clauses of mutual access to public procurement. You make a deal, we have access to your market, you have access to our market. That way you avoid legal procedure against them. While DG Growth, so that's the more economy department of the Commission, Séjourné's department, wants a more restrictive criterion that would only award a Made in Europe label to countries within the EEA, a person briefed on the talks told Politico. So, exactly what I explained before. The economy department, basically pushing an industrial policy view, wants to protect European industry, so raise the shields for around the EU and EEA as to what is considered made in Europe, while DigiTrade, whose objective is to open market as much as possible so that to give like external market, well, they want to have all the people who have signed free trade agreements with the EU to be also beneficiaries of that. This divergence also reflects differences in the German and French positions. For France, the IAA isn't about penalizing foreign companies, but rather boosting industrial production on EU soil. By contrast, the German Ministry of Economic Affairs argues that trading partners shouldn't be hindered by the Made in EU criteria. Why? Because they're afraid that the other countries could take measures to then block European companies from accessing the public market, public procurement contracts, etc., etc. Germany being a huge exporter, they're afraid of that. The plan has also caused jitters in the UK, which is sending its top trade minister across the channel on a Made in Europe charm offensive next month to head off the threat that British manufacturers will be shut out of EU public procurement. Séjourné played down the concerns. The IAA, and more generally the introduction of a European preference in our legal corpus, entails quite a change of Europe economic doctrines. That's understatement of the year. Very clearly the understatement of the year. He said in a statement, adding that it wasn't surprising to see that the efforts take time. I'm confident we will eventually get there, accommodating the various opinions while maintaining the IAA high degree of ambition, added Séjourné. So, again, two extreme ends of the debate, and then we'll see what is the landing zone and who, on which side that landing zone will be more. Negative feedback from Commission departments would not legally prevent the College of Commissioners, so which is chaired by Van der Leyen. So the College of Commissioners is what we call the Assembly of Commissioners. So when Van der Leyen screams "Commissioners assemble" on the 13th floor, and that they all arrive on the 13th floor, that's called the College of Commissioners. And so the College of Commissioners could overrule the objections of the department, say, okay, we're going with the version of Stéphane Séjourné, or we go with another version. And it's the question of then they overrule politically the technical concerns of the departments, of the services. A single commissioner can also put a text to the vote of the college, although this is a rarely used option with a preference for consensus-based decision-making. Because normally, there is a principle of consensus in the commission in the sense that all the texts that are coming out of the commission, they are not like the text of that commissioner or that commissioner, like only that commissioner. Like they are the responsibility of the entire commission. Or the entire commission is supposed to defend and speak as one on that text. That's why they don't like to do votes, because if you have a vote, that means that there are divergences between commissioners that you're actually putting out there, and then it goes a bit against the idea of that the commissioners, the college, is this sort of uniform body that always speaks in one voice. So they always prefer the consensus. That way, everyone can defend the text, and you don't have to ask, okay, Commissioner X, you voted against that text and actually it passed, so now do you support it, yes or no? That avoids awkward, let's say, discussions. Alright, quickly, I have a second article on that, and I have a third one that is slightly linked, but mostly focused on defense, let's say. So Made in Europe plan sparks intense Brussels lobbying. The European preference strategy is facing intense lobbying from both inside and outside the bloc. Already delayed once, the proposal now risks being pushed back again. So the Commission, I'll go fast because part of it is things that we have already read. So European Commission is pushed to embed a so-called European preference in public procurement, is triggering heavy lobbying from EU capitals and foreign partners. The proposal, designed to counter Chinese and US competition, would see product made in Europe officially favored in public contracts and support schemes. Critics have branded it protectionism, and several member states have sought to water down the definition of Made in Europe to ensure access for like-minded countries. So according to the officials, the Industrial Accelerator Act is going to be delayed until the 26th of yeah, likely to face another delay. Why it was first delayed in November. So there was a leaked draft of the IAA, seen by Euronews, which lists strategic sectors targeted for European preference, including chemicals, automotive, AI, and space. It also proposes EU origin threshold at 70% for electric vehicles, 25% for aluminium, and 30% for plastics used in windows and doors. The draft has drawn intense pushback. Nordic and Baltic states warn that a strict Made in Europe regime could deter investment and limit EU companies' access to cutting-edge technologies from non-EU countries. In a separate leak reported by Euronews, the Commission appeared to lean towards the German position. A European preference open to like-minded partners with reciprocal procurement commitments and those contributing to the Union competitiveness, resilience, and economic security objective. That part is important, reciprocal procurement commitments, which is basically a reference to FTAs, because by default, most countries in the world restrict the ability of foreign companies to compete on public procurement. So if you go, I'm inventing. Let's say you're Australia. There's no trade deal for now with Australia. Australia will say, okay, well, for my public procurement, I'm restricting the ability of foreign companies to apply to my public procurement in some sectors or in all or to a certain level, etc. You also have the Americans, for instance, who have the Buy American Act that says, that mandates, that it obliges states, American states, federal states, to buy from American companies. I think it's like 30% at the minimum, depending on the sector and everything. So then it goes even further. You're not only restricting the ability of foreigners to apply, you also mandate, well, no matter what, you need to have at least X% of American products as the end result of your public procurement. That's the default. The EU, on the contrary, by default, is very open. The EU, by default, Australian companies, the EU does not have a free trade agreement with Australia. By default, an Australian company could apply in most public procurements in the EU. So we have kind of a situation where we are very open, but the other are not very open. And so when we negotiate a free trade agreement, one of the first things that the EU is often pushing is for opening the public procurements, the public markets of the other side. Saying, okay, we give you already large access to our public procurement market. You have to give us access to yours. And so that's one of the big fights, like one of the big offensive objective of the EU in free trade agreements. That's the thing that they push more the most for, which leads to difficult conversation, because then the other side, seeing that the EU is not like a lightweight economically, they will be afraid that suddenly you will see a wave of European companies competing with their local companies and everything. So you have a bit of back and forth on that. And so, for instance, like with the EU just found an agreement with India for a free trade agreement. That agreement is actually very light, in the sense that it's a very simplified agreement that puts out of the scope a lot of things that were difficult for both sides to negotiate because of Trump, because of everything, and notably the question of access to public procurement market is not part of the India deal. Meaning that if the FTA is signed and ratified, European companies will not have, by this text alone, you could have another text that will come up, but they will not have access to more easily access to the Indian market, Indian public market, let's say. Which then, under the German version, means that they will not be covered by the Made in EU requirement, because it has to be reciprocal. So yeah. What was I? The UK is among the partners wary of a protectionist turn, with British officials stressing that the EU and UK economies are highly intertwined. Oh, it's funny to see the UK say that now, post-Brexit. Say, guys, no, come on. Come on, our economy are heavily intertwined. That would be stupid to create barriers between us. Come on. Like, we're smart people. We're not doing things that would be detrimental to our economies and that would go against our respective supply chains. Come on. It's not the moment to mess with what is already working, one official told Euronews. In particular, the EU remains the largest export market for British cars, while several European manufacturers produce vehicles in the UK, which in 2024 was the EU's second largest export destination after the US. Almost half of our trade is with the EU. We trade almost as much with the EU as all of the rest of the world combined, UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves said, I don't know why I wanted to say Charles, I think I mixed Chancellor and Rachel, so Chancellor Rachel Reeves said last week. British sources also argue that London's deep capital markets could help the EU secure investment to revive its industry unless the bloc closes its market. Maybe the EU should join the EU. The UK should join the... I'm struggling with it today. Maybe the UK should join the EU. That's an idea, I have a feeling that that idea... Like, they had this idea already in the past. The EU was kind of keen on that, but... I don't know what happened. I have a feeling like 10 years ago something happened. Can't remember. That's being old. I'm losing my memory. I always wonder why they're not in the union. I mean, think about that. Brexit. So the referendum was 10 years ago already. I feel like old as shit. In not so many years, we're gonna reach a generation that never was a generation of British people who never were members of the EU. Like in 8 years, you will have Brits who will come of age, who will never have known really pre-Brexit Europe. Or you could argue yes, but it was the referendum. The actual Brexit happened in 2020. Fair, but yeah, we're slowly getting to that point, which is very weird when you think about it. And may then feed potentially feed a rejoin campaign, especially as the older people who voted Brexit are dying. I was looking at like the other day, I saw like a breakdown of the demography of people who voted Brexit and where they were like 10 years later, and so you had like also like the people who died. You would see like the breakdown between those who voted Remain and those who voted Brexit, and you see that a very large chunk of the people who died in the past 10 years were actually Brexit voters. And so that if those people were, if the Brits were to vote today, just the amount of people who died since then like would make the difference, and so Remain would have won. COVID years don't count. Yeah, I'm not sure biology is and history works that way. I think there it's a coping mechanism. That's a different thing, let's say. Where was I? There. So the Commission is weighing its next move, aiming to table a proposal ahead of the March EU summit focused on competitiveness. But pressure is also mounting from within, with pushback from the Trade Directorate, so the part of the dealings with trade deal, traditionally a staunch defender of an open EU market. Paris, a long-time champion of the Made in Europe strategy, says the concept has gained sufficient traction in Brussels to become a reality, and that the debate has now shifted to its implementation, which I kind of agree. I kind of agree with. Well, you could say, you're French, of course, you would think that. Fair, but well. Hey, Ticanis. Welcome. Oh, you're an hour late, but you can catch up. Thanks for the resub, Ticanis. Let me pull up your questions. So, up. I'm opening my thing. Today we're gonna do question 229. Up. Question 229. Scrolling. Did we do this one? We have not, actually. Up, let me open the poll. It's gonna be a question about Romania. Alors, nouveau sondage. I'm just gonna be doing a couple of copy paste. So as a reminder, whenever someone subs, you get one question from my EU quiz. Then you can vote in the chat. I'm just preparing the poll. Up, a couple more, and I will read you everything. Up. And up. Okay, so I will read you first the question and the option, and then I will launch the poll, and you can vote in chat. Have you ever discussed? Yeah, we discussed it like a bit. So we saw that indeed. All right. So the question of today on Romania. So I'm just gonna postpone the ad. Okay. So the question is the following: what is the largest ethnic minority in Romania? Is it A, the Hungarians, B, the Ukrainians, C, the Roma, or D, the Germans? You have 1 minute to vote. So I repeat, what is the largest ethnic minority in Romania? Is it Hungarian, Ukrainians, Roma, or Germans? You can vote in the chat, and you have the poll above, so vote there, and then I give you the answer. Of course, if you know the answer, don't spoil. I mean, you can discuss it in the chat if what you voted and everything, but otherwise, don't spoil. You missed the you'll have the replay. I mean, it was like maybe 20 minutes before you arrived, so it's like 5 minutes discussion. All right, a few more seconds to vote. Seems that you are of one mind. That's the only one kind of answer so far. A few more seconds. And yes, you all voted that it was the Hungarians that are the largest ethnic minority in Romania, and you are right. You are right, it's indeed the Hungarians. And I don't have the breakdown. Usually when I have a question like that, I have the breakdown in terms of the various population. Maybe I have it in a different file, but sorry, I don't have the thing there. In Romania, the Russians? No. I'm surprised that none of you said Roma. I would have thought that the Roma would have been an option many of you would have chosen. But you're smarter than me, so what can I do? I'm just a streamer. Ukrainians. That's why I put Ukrainians, because it could have been a trick. All right. So thanks again, Ticanis, for the quiz sponsored question. All right. Let's continue. Where were we? Hello. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, I kind of agree with the fact that indeed we have the principle of the made in Europe that is finished. Finished, no, accepted, and then this question of how far you go with it. I think with the elections in Romania last year, the Hungarian minority was often in the news. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you're right, because they have a region that is with the Hungarian minority. And Andros, stop me if I'm wrong, but they even have, I think, their own party. I think in Romania you have a party that is like specifically for the Hungarian minority, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle last year. Yeah, that's the case. I think there was a bit of a kerfuffle last year. Because Orban was saying, "Oh yeah, we want to do this," and then the Hungarian party was saying, "Well, no, actually, we're going to do our own thing." So there was a bit of a mismatch, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong, but I do seem to remember at some point there was a bit of a fight between what Orban has said and what the leader of that party said during the presidential election. They're even part of I would not be surprised. I mean. Because I think it was the party in question was not was not in favor of the shit. I forgot the name of the other guy. The Eurosceptic one. I forget. They're back on. Yeah, I imagine so. Simeon, thank you. All right, let's finish this article. Well, it's literally one sentence. So it's there for no surprises. Okay, yeah, literally it was one sentence, so I could have pushed a bit further. All right. One final article on that point, and then we will switch to Trump's Board of Peace. So still on the European preference, but this time with a slight shift. We're not going to talk about industrial strategy, but rather about defense. With, as you can see, the Pentagon aggressively lobbying the EU against a buy European weapon push. Because of course the European preference, we find it inside the debate on industry, but also on the topic of defense, because the EU wants to rearm, wants to redevelop its defense industry. And so similarly, there's a push to give priority to European companies. So in previously unreported remarks, the US administration warned Brussels that it will retaliate if Europeans strong-arm American companies out of the market. Hello. So US President Donald Trump's administration has threatened to retaliate against European countries if the EU favors domestic weapons makers in a drive to rearm the continent. The US Department of Defense objected to any EU efforts to limit American arms manufacturers' access to the European market and warned that would trigger a reciprocal response. As a reminder, the EU has already adopted a couple of funds/laws, the Safe Loan and the EDIP regulation, that does include the principle of buy European or buy allied, I mean, not only by European, so principle is buy European weapons, extended a bit to trusted partners, so countries with which the EU has a defense agreement, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Canada, Japan, and maybe Korea, but I'm not certain. And the UK, I think they were about to sign one. And so these countries would fall inside the Made in Europe, and so you could buy with European money weapons from this. And already in these laws, that included a European preference, the Americans were not included, specifically because they're not Europeans, and the EU does not have a defense and security arrangement from them. So you already have tools in terms of European weapon investments that already exclude American-made, fully American-made companies. You have some threshold, like it's X% of a product that needs to be European. But the principle is that normally the Americans do not have full access to these funds. So the administration made the previously unreported remarks in a contribution to the European Commission consultation earlier this month after the EU executive branch requested feedback from government and industry on European weapon procurement rules. The United States strongly opposes any changes to the directive that would limit US industry's ability to support or otherwise participate in EU member state national defense procurement. The US administration wrote ahead of a planned update of EU defense procurement laws. So the consultation is something that also is normal in EU legislation, in the preparation. When you prepare a new law, before that law is presented, the Commission needs to, prepare it, and it does that on the basis of data, and also they consult people. So you will have impact assessments, that sort of thing, and also consultations, meaning the Commission will open a public questionnaire, or sometimes just a targeted one, where they will say, well, we're thinking about doing this law. Here's some general principles and approach we have in mind. Tell us what you think. And so it's a way to collect en masse feedbacks from industries, NGOs, or individual people, etc., to see where the balance is, what are the priority of the different sectors, etc. Technically, it's something that maybe this one was not a public consultation because it's defense, but the general, let's say, public consultation is public, and so in theory it's supposed to get the feedback of citizens. In practice, very few actual citizens answer those consultations, and the consultations are not made for regular citizens. It's a trade association, companies, states. It's going to be academics. It's going to be NGOs. It's going to be all the people who do some lobbying around EU legislation that are going to answer. You may have citizens answering. Most of the time, they will do so because an NGO has made a call to arms, say, oh yes, there's this consultation, you have to answer, you have to participate to give us more weight, here's a copy-paste answer, you just have to do Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and you're done. So usually when you have citizens, it's basically as part of a campaign from an NGO who is trying to bolster up its weight in the consultation. And so there, the US, as part of a consultation, said, well, okay, this is what we think on that topic. And so they said, yeah, we don't think you should have protectionist policies on that. And the contributions, they're not necessarily, you have the choice. When you answer a public consultation, you have the choice between having, No, public consultation, the answers will always be public, but you can choose whether or not your name appears. If you're a company, a trade association, or whatever. But normally the answers are public when it's a public consultation. So technically you could go today on the website of public consultation and you could go click on the random. Actually, let's do it live. Have your say, commission. They have a platform, have your say. Up, you can do it, open. Boom, boom. Boom, up. Alright. Okay, so you have there the thing. So let's see, opening a random one. Let's see, revision of the mandate of Union Agency for Railway. It's a call for evidence, feedback. And so you can see the feedback that people have given. So you can see here the feedback of the Swedish Transport Agency. It's a call of evidence, so it's a shorter one. Sometimes it's a full questionnaire and everything. You can have here. It seems like it's a random, like a EU citizen, so a random EU citizen who has written something for the consideration of the EU, etc., etc. But otherwise, for the most part, like companies, NGOs. The other one is what? It's going to be. You have public authorities. Yeah, it's a public authorities. This one, so you can have all sorts of it. There, it's a simple one because it's only 14 like feedback at least that are public. that they received. When you have a full consultation on a big file, it can be thousands of feedback that you get. So anyway, that way you see what the consultation looks like. Where was I? There. All right, let's continue. Hello. Blah 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 blah. Okay, protectionist and exclusionary policies that strong-arm American companies out of the market when Europe's largest defense firms continue to greatly benefit from market access in the United States are the wrong course of action, it added. Washington's comments highlight a paradox in the US approach to Europe. While the Trump administration has repeatedly told Europeans that it wants them to shoulder the bulk of the continent's conventional defense, the US doesn't want that to come at the expense of American defense firms. I mean, to be fair, I don't see that as a paradox. I see that as very logical. I don't see a paradox there. Yes, you have to pay more for your defense, but you buy from me. For me, I don't see a paradox in there, personally. Politico previously reported that US Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau slammed European NATO allies for prioritizing their own defense industry over American arms suppliers during a closed-door meeting in December. The State Department co-signed the Trump administration contribution to the Commission's survey. Over the past few years, the European Commission has been trying to increase the share of European weaponry in the bloc's arsenal and procurement contracts, while it braces for potential conflicts with Russia. For decades, the continent has heavily relied on American military equipment, ranging from F-35 fighter jets to HIMARS artillery systems and Patriot air defenses. Almost two-thirds of the bloc's imported weapons are supplied by the US. Although now you're seeing like kind of a maybe not a reversal, but it's going down. Like for instance, the Germans, so the Germans historically tend to buy a lot of American stuff. They've put tons of money on the table to rearm from last year, and actually in the contract in the first set of contracts, it's a very small minority of the money that they're putting on the table that would go to US weapons. Most of them would be German or European. So, I mean, it's still gonna be like you're still gonna have important parts of European equipment that will be made in US, particularly because there are some capacities that the Europeans simply don't do on scale. Like, for instance, Patriot air defense. That's kind of a domain where the US just do the kind of the best product, and so it makes sense that they would want to rely on that. Same things for AWACS and that sort of thing. There are other where you have European alternatives, but yeah. Nonetheless, probably you will see a trend where the place of American weapons is going to reduce over time in the European weapon mix, let's say. Such forceful pushback from the Trump administration also threatens to complicate any broader buy European industrial efforts from the Commission, which is what we read from before. It will test how far European countries are willing to go in becoming more independent from the US, which has become an increasingly unreliable partner in the age of Trump. The EU's executive branch is expected to present an update to the 2009 Procurement Directive in the third quarter. That's okay, so that's... Okay, I thought it was next year, it's actually this year. Okay. Amid a wider controversial push for more buy European rules. It's still unclear whether the new text will include binding rules to favor homegrown manufacturers. The EU is already favoring local companies in projects such as the 150 billion Loan for Weapons Safe program and for arm purchases from Ukraine can make with the recently agreed 90 billion loan to Kyiv. So that is the Commission borrowing on the market 150 billion euros and then telling member states, okay, if you want to use that money to buy weapons, apply, and we'll give you money, but you can only use that money to buy European weapons or European from trusted partners, so Canadians, Japanese, and maybe Korea. I'm not sure for Korea, but not Americans. Americans are excluded from that. And same thing for Ukraine, although there was a bit of a fight between France and others, because France wanted like to have a very, very, very extensive interpretation of the buy European. They wanted like to all the money to go exclusively to European companies. The other were like, yeah, well, that's a bit bullshit, because there are things that we don't produce or not in enough quantities, and like the Ukrainians are actually using the weapons right now to defend themselves. So if they need American stuff to defend themselves, we're not gonna let Kyiv get bombed because the air defense is not made in France. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit, but that's kind of the debate there was at some point in there. EU money can be used to purchase military equipment only if it is at least 65% of the gear's value is sourced in Europe. The Pentagon warned in its contribution that any move to include a strong Buy European clause in the future procurement legislation would trigger retaliation from the US. If European preference measures were implemented in member states' national procurement laws, the United States would likely review all existing blanket waivers and exceptions to Buy American laws provided under and made in association with with our reciprocal defense procurement agreement, the Department of Defense wrote. So, like I said, in the US, they have a Buy American laws that mandates the administrations to buy at the very least X amount of American products. And so apparently there seems to be some waivers for the Europeans. I didn't know that. I don't know if it's for all of them or just in part, but they're threatening to remove those if the Europeans do the Buy European Act without a waiver. In effect, that would mean the US would shut access to European companies. Okay, so it's not... Okay, around 19 of the 27 EU capitals have signed such agreement with Washington, which allow European companies to compete for some Pentagon deals. Okay, so it's a national deal. Well, it makes sense because it's defense procurement. So yes, it would be national contracts. Okay, it makes sense that it is with member states and not with the EU. But again, it's only for some Pentagon deals. Subsequently, any future exception would be considered on a contract-by-contract basis and only when deemed necessary to support NATO interoperability and standardization requirements, the US stressed. While the Pentagon purchases material primarily from American companies, European firms such as Italy's Leonardo and Sweden's Saab also sell to the US. According to Washington, a Buy European clause for national procurement would limit capital's freedom, weaken NATO, and jeopardize European countries' ability to reach alliance capabilities targets agreed last year, which is 5% of investment into their defense. The US administration also claims that would be against EU commitments under the EU-US trade deal signed last summer, in which the Commission pledged to purchase more American weapons, which again, the Commission made a pledge. It's not the Commission that can force member states to what they do with their own money. So it's kind of an empty promise to an extent, because simply the EU does not have that power. It's like the promise, yes, we're going to buy 600-700 billion euros dollars worth of American gas. It's not the EU that's going to mandate that, and in any case, the Americans don't produce that much gas, at least not enough gas to reach that amount. So it's a bit of empty promises there. European preference language has already featured across EU programs, but its inclusion in the directive would be a turning point in impacting individual member states' sovereign national budgets, the Trump administration wrote. The Pentagon end state message was echoed by the US Chamber of Commerce. While the tone is milder, the organization also warns in its contribution against a European preference. Do we have question on European preference before we switch to the next topic, which is going to be the Board of Peace of Trump and how the Commission is facing backlash for attending it? Giving you a few seconds while I'm cleaning my notifications. Up. Alright, I don't see questions. Let's dive into it. I'm just gonna remove that. There we go. Up, spoiler. Alright, so context. You may remember our dear Orange Man, Donald Trump, has brokered kind of an agreement to put an end, or at least to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. And as part of that agreement, he promised the creation of a so-called Board of Peace that would oversee the reconstruction of Gaza and kind of supervise ensuring that war doesn't break out again inside that in Gaza. So that's what was kind of agreed back then. Since then, Trump has published the founding documents of that Board of Peace, and it turned out that Board of Peace actually is much wider than what was initially presented, because initially it was supposed to be something that was only about Gaza, just like overseeing like the reconstruction and the respect of the ceasefire, but only on Gaza. And in his founding document, Trump basically is trying to make that Board of Peace, of which he is a president for life, and he has kind of a veto power on everything that happens in there. And he's trying to pitch the Board of Peace as actually not only about Gaza, but about anything pretty much. So he's kind of presenting that as a sort of alternative United Nations, which was not the initial deal. And since then, the countries that have been invited to join that Board of Peace, at least among the Europeans, are kind of not super thrilled about that, and hesitating, if not rejecting, joining that because they see that as undermining the UN and having a way of functioning that is not acceptable. Because again, like Trump is president for life, he can decide who will follow after him. He has a veto pretty much on everything that is being done. So it's Trump ruling international relations basically. So they're not so keen on that. And you had a few member states saying that they will not attend, other reserving their decisions, other saying that they would attend. Hungary and Slovakia, I think, said they would attend, they would participate. Other are just sending observers and etc. But the interesting bit is that in this body that is presented by Trump as an alternative to the UN, someone received an invitation. That someone being Ursula von der Leyen, president of the Commission. Problem, at least institutionally, the Commission, for starters, the EU is not a state, so normally it doesn't have a full member capacity in those kind of organizations. 2, the Commission does not have a lot of powers when it comes to foreign affairs. Normally, the EU institution that deals with foreign affairs, the one that speaks on behalf of all the member states when it comes to foreign affairs, it's not the Commission, or at least not the President of the Commission, it's the President of the European Council. and to a lesser extent the High Representative. So the fact that the invitation was sent to von der Leyen creates an interesting situation. And then, so the opening of that Board of Peace was this week, and it turned out that the Commission decided to send a commissioner, Sousa, I never know how to pronounce a name, to attend the opening of that Board of Peace. That again is dividing the member states on what to do with it. And so there was a big backlash on whether or not the Commission was able and was right to attend that meeting, with France being among the most vocal against that, because France is one of the countries that says we will not attend that thing. So France says Commission lacks mandate to join the Board of Peace meeting as Brussels remains defiant. Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot says the Commission never should have attended Thursday's meeting in Washington as Commissioner Sousa lacked a mandate from European Union leaders. The French government lashed at the European Commission for its decision to send the Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Dubravka Sousa, as an observer to the first formal gathering of United States President Donald Trump's Board of Peace on Thursday, saying she does not have a mandate. The European Commission never should have attended the meeting of the Board of Peace in Washington today, as it had not received a mandate from the Council of the EU, which again, the Council is the one that normally deals with foreign affairs. Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot wrote on social media, on social platform X. Beyond the legitimate political question posed by the Board of Peace, which is the point that he's trying to create something that is alternative to the UN, which is not necessarily legal or appropriate, because that was not the initial deal, etc., etc. The Commission should meticulously respect European law and institutional balance under all circumstances, he added. In other words, if anyone had to attend this thing, it should not be you. In his comments, French Minister Barrot implied the Commission has overstepped its mandate by taking decisions in the domain of foreign policy without the approval of member states. Because, remember, the EU has pretty weak powers when it comes to foreign affairs. It's kind of it can coordinate actions based on the minimal consensus among member states, but it doesn't speak on its own. It doesn't speak without consulting member states. And again, the one who on paper is responsible for that, it's not the Commission, it's the Council. And so you have historically a fight between who is supposed to represent the EU outside. Is it the President of the Commission? Is it the President of the Council? And so that's why you see often both of them being there. And when you have international summits, you will see von der Leyen and Costa both being there to speak on Europe because, well, the Commission is the Commission, but Costa, representing the Council, is the one that actually is supposed to represent the foreign affairs views of member states. But again, I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, okay, it's we split in two. Then you could also politically have a situation where other countries will de facto identify someone as the leader. And so there, the fact that Trump sent an invitation to von der Leyen and not to Costa kind of hints that in his mind, and to be fair, in the mind of many people around the world, the actual leader, the actual person to speak to, if you want to speak to Europe, is von der Leyen and not Costa. Even if on paper that's not supposed to be the case. So that's why they're talking about balance, institutional balance, because that plays into that fight between the Commission and the Council on this. It feels like von der Leyen made a rookie mistake. I wonder why she did it when it's obviously out of her range. I don't think it's a rookie mistake. I mean, there's two things. There's the question, like the justification of the commission of why they attended without a mandate, and despite the fact that it's a politically tricky thing, and the way they communicated about it. Von der Leyen, she sent an invitation. She said, "Well, I was invited, so the commission is invited. Not my fault if the council is not invited. What can I do?" So she's using that to flex a bit and say, "Yeah, you see, I'm the one people want to talk to outside." So it's kind of a flex. Also, it's not a recognition. And the commission officially says, well, we haven't taken a decision on whether or not we're not officially participating to the thing. And we're not even asking for the status of observer, which is a status that exists. We're just showing up. And the reasoning of the commission, which I can understand to a certain extent, is the following. They say, okay, initially, we signed the Board of Peace, or not the Commission, but the Board of Peace was meant to deal with Gaza, and only Gaza. The EU is the main source of finance for the Palestinian Authority. It's the biggest donator to the Palestinian Authority budget. It's the first trade partner of Israel, etc., etc. So the reasoning of the commission is, okay, whether we like it or not, that Board of Peace is happening. Trump is having his opening. He's doing it. Whether we like it or not, it's happening. So it's better to be in the room, at least to know what's being said and being seen, particularly since we kind of have an economic and a financial interest in this, because we are the ones paying for the Palestinian Authority. So yeah, whatever happens on Gaza, it cannot happen without us in the room. And also, you will notice, it's not von der Leyen herself that is going. It's the Commissioner for Mediterranean. So it's kind of a way to remind everyone, say, yeah, the Commissioner for Mediterranean is also the one that has the most say on what's happening in Gaza. The EU Palestinian Authority relation. So it's a way, sending that person is a way to send a message that, well, that Board of Peace is only about Gaza. It's not supposed to be UN 2.0. So the commission's everything is that, okay, we've been invited, that's happening, so we have to be there. So that way we can't have it go against our financial interest, and we can try to steer back the discussion on Gaza. But we're still not saying we are officially part of it. That's the reasoning of the commission. Which, from a realpolitik point of view, is not without its merit. Yes, they're going beyond the mandate that they have, because member states have not decided on that, but you have to be in the room. Then there's the question of how they communicated about it. And so the commissioner, Sousa, made a bunch of tweets when she was there, etc. You read the tweets, you do not see anywhere the fine print, in the sense that we're attending, but we do not actually recognize at this stage the Board of Peace as the place to solve all conflicts in the world. All the connection of Sousa, so, oh, look, I was at the Board of Peace, it's great. So, which is amounts kind of an endorsement without nuances of what Trump is doing. Which is, of course, not what the Commission is supposed to do. So the realpolitik behind the Commission saying, well, we're going to send someone to see what's happening, I kind of get the reasoning. You can the member states are not happy with it and understand why they're not happy with it. The way they communicated about it, very bad, because you just read the communication of the commission, you have the impression that they are endorsing de facto what Trump is doing, which is absolutely not the case. The commission does not have a mandate for that, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, but this is exactly what wishy-washy attitude that Trump deplores. You either take part in responsibility or you... That's why the commission would be keen on being present. They say, yeah, if we're not part of it, well, Trump will move ahead anyway. So it's better that we are in the room. That's the thinking. At least until there's clarity on what the Board of Peace is actually about. Where was I? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Early on Thursday, the spokesperson for the French Foreign Ministry, Pascal Confavre, has told reporters in Paris that Commissioner Sousa would have to explain it when she returns. France, along with Belgium, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, Sweden, and Portugal, had raised objection to Sousa's attendance of the gathering in Washington during a closed-door meeting of ambassadors on Wednesday, warning that her presence risks being interpreted as a collective endorsement of the controversial body. Which, again, the communication of the Commission kind of hints to, even if that's not what they were supposed to do. So on that front, the criticism is pretty legitimate. The board's charter, which makes no reference to Gaza, while, again, it was supposed to be created only for Gaza, has been widely criticized for its global mandate that seemingly aims to supplant the United Nations and for entrusting sweeping powers to Trump as a lifelong chairman. A non-paper drafted by the EU's diplomatic arm, and seen by Euronews, raises a series of legal concerns surrounding the board's charter, including the way the autonomy of the EU legal order mitigates against a concentration of powers in the hands of the chairman, in reference to Trump. The Board of Peace needs to refocus on the situation in Gaza, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Confavre also said on Thursday, adding that as long as there is ambiguity on the board's parameters, France cannot participate. Slovenia's Foreign Minister, Tanja Fajon, also said on Thursday that the government had reservations about Sousa's participation, suggesting that the Commission lacks authority over EU foreign policy, which is conducted based on unanimous position agreed by member states. Which is true. Meanwhile, the EU executive remained defiant on Thursday, defending Sousa's participation as central to the EU's efforts to contribute to Gaza's post-war recovery and reconstruction. Our participation is really to be seen in the context of our long-standing commitment to the implementation of the ceasefire in Gaza, as well as our commitment to take part in international efforts when it comes to the recovery and reconstruction of Gaza, a spokesperson for the EU executive said. We do believe that we need to be at the table, otherwise we will simply be a payer and not a player in Gaza's future recovery, the spokesperson added. The EU is the biggest donor of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people, with a total contribution of €1.65 billion to the territories since the outbreak of the war between Israel and Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. The Commission spokesperson also underlined that as many as 14 of the EU 27 member states have sent a diplomatic representative to the Thursday meeting, in a clear signal that governments do not want to be sidelined from the talks on Gaza's post-war future. Yet, most countries are opting to send a diplomat or a civil servant, while the Commission is dispatching a political representative, something that diplomats says has left several capitals uncomfortable. Indeed, if you're just saying, well, I'm just here to take notes, but I'm not endorsing the thing, well, you just sent a civil servant. That way you can't say, yeah, it's not a political recognition, we're just sending someone to take notes and report back. Sending a commissioner implies a level of political endorsement of of what's happening there. An EU official speaking on condition of anonymity confirmed that Sousa did not plan to intervene during the meeting later on Thursday to express the Commission's positions. The official added that her presence was a way to avoid being excluded completely from the board's plans for Gaza's recovery. So again, part of a realpolitik kind of thing. Sorry. The Commission itself continues to maintain it will not join the board as a member, citing doubts over its scope, governance, and compatibility with the United Nations Charter. Hungary and Bulgaria. Okay, I thought it was Slovakia, so it's Bulgaria. Hungary and Bulgaria are the only EU countries to have expressed the wish to sit on the board as permanent members. Oh yeah, by the way, it was funny. Like, so Orban was present for the opening of the board. And he said, Hungary is the only EU founding members to be present at the board, and people are like, Hungary is not a founding member of the EU. What kind of bullshit is that? But yeah, it was funny to see. Yeah, of course, Hungary is a founding member. Yeah, we were there in the 50s. Source, trust me, bro. But 14 countries, including Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Poland, have since sent a diplomatic representative to observe Thursday's meeting. Sousa's participation has also sparked anger among MEPs. Nathalie Loiseau, a French MEP who sits on the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, questioned the mandate that allows Sousa to join the meeting in Washington. Since when does the Commission decide on this kind of issue behind the back of member states? She will have to explain herself quickly, Loiseau wrote on X. The center-left's SND and Renew Europe, they also have, they just released like a couple of hours ago a common statement, so socialists, liberals and Greens pushing back on the Commission attending. I was a bit surprised to see that GUE was not signing, but I don't know whether they were invited to begin with. I don't know. But yeah. So yeah, they issued a statement legitimizing a body that sidelines UN and invites autocratic influence is against EU principles, the Renew Europe group said. The left, meanwhile, so the far left actually group, has described the move as a pathetic act of bending the knee to Trump. Urban services, that's what I've seen. That's what I've seen indeed, like the Orban saying, yeah, it's the only founding members of the EU that is there. Well, I don't think I think he knows that the Hungary is not a founding member of the EU. That I'm pretty sure he knows. If he said that, either it was a slip of the tongue or it was like just to do a weird flex for the Americans or for his campaign or whatever. I don't know, but it was funny of him to say that. What time is it? Oh yeah, we're good. All right, so as you can see, member states and MEPs are not super happy with the Commission on this one. Not super happy. And so EU ministers, so the member states, want to grill the Commission Sousa over her attendance at Trump's Board of Peace launch. I saw a clip of him saying that it was yesterday. I saw it yesterday evening. So the EU foreign ministers will question Commission Vice President Dubravka Sousa on Monday about her participation at the launch of Donald Trump's Board of Peace in Washington, amid criticism from several member states over the Commission's mandate and role. So yeah, she will be grilled by member states on Monday at the Foreign Affairs Council, where she was the formation of the council that gathers foreign affairs ministers, where she will brief ministers on a visit to the inauguration of Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Sousa has been at the center of controversy and faced criticism for attending the event in Washington as an observer. France has criticized that, saying they lack the mandate. he said he was only a founding member of the board. Oh, we'll have to double check. I mean, was he pronouncing the speech in English or in Hungarian? Maybe it was like a translation issue? I don't know. Where was I? It was in English. Okay, well, to be double checked. Or maybe he mistranslated in English. I don't know. Doesn't matter. The criticism stemming from the Commission overstepping its mandate on foreign policy without the approval of the 27 member states. Because again, anything on foreign affairs is decided at unanimity. The Board of Peace is an initiative launched by Trump aimed at finding solutions to international conflicts. However, several EU countries have criticized the project, arguing it could sideline the United Nations and grant Trump a lifelong presidency of the body. Sousa, who is the Commissioner for the Mediterranean, will attend Monday's Foreign Affairs Council to inform member states about her trip to Washington, sources familiar with the matter told Euronews. Several EU countries are expected to raise whether the Commission made a mistake by attending and whether it had the legal mandate to do so. Alongside France, Belgium, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, Sweden, and Portugal have raised objections to Sousa's participation in the Washington gathering. On Monday, they will also discuss the situation in Ukraine and the Middle East. And they will host the Director General of the Board of Peace for Gaza, Nikolai Madlenov, for discussions. So speaking on Thursday, the Commission defended the participation. Otherwise, we'll simply be paying. Okay, that's exactly what we saw. 14 new countries took part in the Board of Peace launch, but only Bulgaria and Hungary are full members at the moment, while the other 12 attended as observers. So on Monday, Sousa is not going to spend a good time with the ministers, as there is a power struggle between the Commission and the Council over that. Do we have questions on that? Before we go, actually we're being quite good on time. Before we go to our final article, which is going to be about something completely different, we're going to talk about the Capitals Markets Union, which is a serpent de mer, as we call in French, something that has been in the background for a long time. And so Politico made an article to explain what this is all about, and since we're going to, it's going to be again a point of discussion in the months and years to come, I figured it was a good time to go over the basis of that thing. That's good. Go away. Thank you very much. All right, I don't see any other questions. Then let's go. It's rare that I'm like we are not even 2 hours in. I've been very very good in terms of pace. Or you've been very silent. I don't know, but either way, I mean, maybe it's also because I'm not used to it. Because usually on Friday it's the French stream, and it's usually a 3-hour stream at least in the French. So being on a Friday, say, oh, I'm almost at the end. It's not even 2 hours. That's a novelty. Let's say like that. While on the contrary, on Thursday, I did a 4-hour stream. I was at the end of my life by the end of the stream, but it was for the good cause. All right. So, capital markets for dummies. What exactly are EU leaders trying to do? Watchdogs, a 2-speed Europe, and an exclusive E6 club. It's all here in your essential guide to understanding the hottest topic in Brussels right now. That's fine. Don't worry. I was teasing. Don't worry about it. So if there's a particular piece of EU jargon that's been on everyone's lips lately, it's the Saving and Investments Union. Formerly known as the Capital Markets Union. Okay, so I'm not even on the latest trend in terms of EU jargon. I still call it the Capital Markets Union. Well, actually now the cool people call it the Savings and Investment Union. Although it doesn't flow out of the tongue as easily as Capital Markets Union. Like I prefer Capital Markets Union to Saving and Investment Union. It's a bit more of a mouthful. So yeah, I'll be a boomer and call it the Capital Markets Union. Deal with it. So the Capital Markets Union, the art of the project is to create a US-style financial market to make the EU a more attractive place for companies to issue stock and attract investors. So one problem that the EU has in terms of economy is that whenever you have a company that wants to grow in the EU, so you have your startup, you have your company, you do well, and you want to grow. You want to go to the next level, and you need investments. You need money. You need fresh money to become EU-wide or international. The problem that the EU currently has is that there is no unified capital market, EU capital market. It's all silos. Every country has its own capital market with its own investment rules, legislation, etc., etc. Meaning that there's less money available because you only have access to the pool of money that is in your member state. If you're a French startup, well, when you want to grow, you have easy access. You have access to the French money, but the German market works under different rules, etc., etc. So you have less money available. And because it's 27 rules, it's more complicated to have access. Which makes one thing that makes it good for one actor is the US. Because the US is a single market, is a united market. They have massive amounts of money available. And so that means that whenever you have a startup that is growing, either they struggle to gather sufficient capital on the European markets to finance themselves, meaning that they are either forced to go on the American markets to get American money to finance themselves, or they get bought directly by American companies. And the second issue is that we have a trend in Europe, is that, it's just a practice, Europeans, citizens, you and I, we tend to put money into our saving accounts, but though that money in the saving accounts does not go in the market. It's not money that can be used easily for investments. It's not put on capital markets. While in the US, the American citizens, they put massive amounts of money on the capital markets, meaning that makes the pot of money available for investments much bigger, because the Americans put tons of money into capital markets with all the problems that potentially go with it, but also it makes the pot bigger, while the Europeans, most of their money is not accessible to for investment. So it makes the pot of money smaller and then divided in 27. And so one long-standing discussion is, okay, should we and how make a single market for investment and incentivize citizens to put more of their money available for capital markets, so for investments in companies. And so that has been like a very, very long topic of discussion in single market and financial discussion. With member state pushing back against it. The article will explain it. So yeah, Capital Markets Union is how do we make it more attractive for investors and companies to finance themselves. But vying national interests have plagued the project since its inception over a decade ago. Frustration over the lack of progress has begun to boil over as cash-strapped countries look to encourage EU citizens to invest some 11 trillion in cash savings in their banks. Okay, so yeah, the Europeans have 11 trillion euro in their savings that is not available for investment. So they want to incite the Europeans to put part of that money on capital markets. So invest some of the 11 trillion euros in cash savings in their bank accounts and turbocharge the economy. To break the deadlock, some countries are advocating a two-speed Europe that would allow smaller clusters of countries to integrate their financial markets without the burden of the laggard. Meaning that instead of having all the 27 member states creating that single capital market, you say, okay, all the 27 are not on board, that's fine. If there's only 8, 9, 10, 11 countries that are on board, well, we'll start with the 11-10. We'll do a smaller capital markets union with the 10 countries. And then if others want to join, well, then we'll grow slowly as countries want to join. But then the 10 countries that want to go ahead with this, they can do it. So I'm still not going to get used to that acronym. So the Capital Markets Union is nothing new, but political support for it is. The aim of forging a single market for investment in the EU goes back as far as 1958. In theory, it should be as important as a common currency or a single market for goods in the bloc. But it's always proved far trickier to achieve. The Capital Markets Union emerged under former European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, our beloved, in 2014 with London planned as the financial heart of the project. Brexit might have ruined his plan by knocking out the EU's key finance center, but the plan was always relatively low ambition, focusing on technical tweaks to make it easier for financiers to operate across 27 markets rather than major political changes. That changed in 2024 when Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made the Capital Markets Union a top priority on the advice of former Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi and Enrico Letta, who made famous reports, or famous in EU circles, reports on competitiveness and the single market. Both men warned that the EU would never be able to keep pace with the US and China without deeper financial markets. So the Capital Markets Union got a facelift and the Saving and Investment Union was born. The centerpiece of the rebranding effort is the creation of a single watchdog for the bloc's largest financial plumbing firms, as well as measures to boost bank financing. So why is it taking so long? Most of the major initiatives to achieve a unified market involve political sacrifices for EU countries. A single market would ideally have unified rules and supervision for finance firms across the EU 27 countries. But there's a problem. Governments are slow to change their national rules, some of which date back hundreds of years, and to cede oversight of their finance industries to the EU level, meaning proposed rules often get watered down in negotiations. So you want to protect your slice of the pie. France is the biggest supporter of this plan, but many smaller countries, or those that depend on their thriving investment sectors, such as Ireland and Luxembourg, are fiercely against it. Why? Because the smaller countries, they're afraid that their national system would just get swallowed by the French, the Germans, the big countries. And Ireland and Luxembourg, and probably the Netherlands as well, they're like, yeah, my country runs on very favorable investment rules. If suddenly it's the EU that rules over that, probably it's not going to be as good as the deal as I'm offering right now, and then maybe the companies that are currently in Ireland and Luxembourg could be tempted to go elsewhere. So of course, they don't want that happening. Asset managers and stock exchanges have also lobbied against EU supervision, partly because they are protected as national champions when they're supervised by their home countries. As for fostering an investment culture in the bloc, many Europeans are very interested in it, or don't understand investing. Sorry, I read wrong. Many Europeans are not very interested in or don't understand investing in products like stock and bonds. Myself included, I don't understand a single thing about this thing. Compared to the US, where people tend to know they need to invest to provide for themselves in retirement, many people in the EU expect state-funded pensions to provide their income in the old age. Yeah, because in Europe, for the most part, it's solidarity-based retirement. You you pay into state funds that then, when you retire, pay you back. Give you a salary. While in the US, the state basically has very limited role or no role at all in your paying your retirement. It's money that you put yourself on the side during your career by investing it into the capital markets. That then, when you retire, well, actually, it's the money that you managed to put on the side and that potentially grew thanks to investments that will pay for your retirement. The advantage of it being that capital markets can grow and tend to grow in average. They tend to grow in average. So meaning that you can have bigger your fund available might get bigger. Problem is that you need to have money to be able to invest, and two, all that works very well if and as long as the markets are doing well, or the companies you have invested are doing well. But if you go through a financial crisis, or the companies you have invested in are crashing out, well, then that means many people would lose a lot, if not all of their money, and so they would have nothing left to pay for their retirement. While the European system that is to a large extent based on state support, well, it's the state, so the state is not going to go bankrupt, so you have a guarantee that you will always have that money at the end of the month. Like in 2008, exactly. So 2008, when there was a financial crisis, many Americans lost a lot of money of their retirement fund. And so if you happen to retire around that time, it's catastrophic for you because all the money you're counting on to retire just went in smoke. So, pros and cons. But yeah, all that to say, that's why the Americans put a lot of money on the capital markets, because that's how they pay for their retirement. Okay, yeah. Oh, look, it's Jean-Claude. It's my president. I have a soft spot for Jean-Claude. So what is the EU doing now? The Commission has put forward multiple initiatives over the last years to boost an investment culture in the bloc. On banking, it proposed a plan to boost the reselling of debt by banks, known as securitization, and will publish a plan later this year on the competitiveness of the EU banking industry. For financial markets, it has pushed EU countries to create simple investment accounts for their citizens to boost financial literacy and to update pension systems. The Commission will in March also propose a 28th regime, an EU-wide legal framework that will offer companies certain uniform rules to operate easily across the bloc. 28th regime is going to be a big discussion. Basically, the idea is pretty similar to what I was presenting earlier. If you want to grow, at the moment you have to deal with 27 different set of rules, which makes it complicated for startups that are trying to grow in Europe. The 28th regime is an attempt to say, okay, we're going to create on some topics, which one is still one for debate, but on some topics, we're going to create a regime that is EU-wide and that companies can choose to use when they create themselves. They can say from the start, I'm going to create myself under the EU-wide system. That way, on some topics, I don't have anymore to deal with 27 different rules. I only have to deal with the 28 regime. But there's plenty of debates on that, notably what kind of rules would be unified, whether it will, what companies will be eligible for it, whether there's a risk of these being used as a tool to circumvent national taxes or labor law, etc., etc. So there's going to be very, very, very complicated discussions on the 28 regime, and actually that's the commission. The commission are supposed to discuss about that like in the coming weeks. The plan for a single watchdog is the key one, and the others to agree. So what's the talk about the two-speed Europe? EU countries are complaining that trying to agree on policies among 27 countries takes too long. Especially when you have, on this topic, especially when you have countries like Luxembourg and Ireland who have absolutely no interest in this. So only for companies, yes, that's the idea. And the 28 regime is intended for companies that intend to operate at EU level at some point. If you are a company that will be just operating in one country, in France, in Germany, in your local market, you have no interest in having the 28 regime. That's for sure. And it's intended for for startups, for companies that want to become EU-wide or even international. Your local baker probably does not need the 28 regime. It's perfectly fine with the French system, the German system, whatever system. It's only for companies that want to go international. But the debate on that is, should it be only for startups? Should bigger company be eligible for that? Should it be from the creation, or can you join it later? So there's plenty of discussion on the scope, who can join, etc., etc. But the benefit is only for companies that want to operate internationally to some level. My baker is quite good. He should export. Is your baker Paul? Where was I? Yeah, let's do speed up. So EU countries are complaining that trying to agree on policies among 27 countries takes too long. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and others have backed plans to peel off and sign up to initiatives in smaller groups. Paul is not great. I mean, okay, I will grant you, compared to a proper boulangerie, yes, Paul is not that great, or at least it's decent, but like nowhere to a proper baker. I will grant you that. That being said, it's not that bad. And pro tip, I don't know if it's in if you're in your countries you have the Too Good To Go. Oh, sorry, I'm going to do a bit of advertising. It's a non-sponsored thing, but I'm telling you my experience. I don't know if you have Too Good To Go, which is an app where you get basically at a discounted price, like stuff that was not sold on the day. Paul, at least in Brussels, is on it. The deals, therefore, are insane. So basically, the principle is that at the end of the day, so they sell like bundles, and so you buy on the day a bundle like that will be like €5. You buy a €5 bundle and you get parts of the unsold product of the day. So you buy in advance. There's a limited amount of it, but you don't know what you're gonna get in advance. And so depending on the seller, it can be more or less good deal. Paul is insane in terms of deal. Like the amount of stuff they will give you, insane. Like once, a couple of times I make the calculation. So I bought like for €5 of things. So I bought a bundle, and then you go at the given time at the end of the day to pick up what they give you. I made the calculation when going back home. So I went on their website and looked at the individual price of the stuff they were giving me. For €5, like in average, like I went like maybe not a dozen times, but like 6 or 7 times. In average, for 5 euros, I was getting between 60 and 70 euros worth of product. Which is insane. I mean, basically for 3 days I was eating only Paul product, but in terms of value for money, that's insane. And for an industrial thing, it's not bad. They make a profit even for those $5. I mean, I think for them the main benefit is that they don't have to stock things. Like, it's not that they're gonna make benefits on the product, is that they're not going to lose money because they need to store the thing, or they need to throw it away because because they can't give it away, or they can't give it away, or whatever. I think that's the benefit for them. And also it brings money that, I mean, I will not go to Paul otherwise. So it's sales that they're making that they would not have made otherwise. Anyway, that was just something I thought about since we were talking about Paul. A good deal on Too Good To Go. Let's go back to the actual topic. Not a sponsored stream. Where was I? So von der Leyen is also on board with the idea. At this month's informal leaders retreat, she said leaders want to be done with phase 1 of the Savings and Investment Union. That includes the market integration, the supervision, and the securitization by June. If there is not sufficient progress by then, she said, the EU will consider enhanced cooperation where 9 or more countries can make different deals together. So the smaller batch of countries go ahead. Yeah, you're right. I mean, all the people who go for Too Good To Go, I've never seen them buying anything else. Like, you don't buy something else. It's just, again, like I was saying, you go there and you buy. Otherwise, you would never, like I said, I will never go to Paul to buy stuff. It's just, but I give them 5 euros because the value for money is insane, and so they get 5 euros where otherwise they would have got 0. So, and they're saving on other stuff, like on the money they're not losing. So I'm sure that if they are in there doing it, it's economically interesting for them. I have no doubt about that. Where was I? Sorry, if you can't advance altogether, smaller group of country can do enhanced cooperation where they can go ahead without the others. The finance ministers of France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and Poland are already on the case. In January, they decided to create the E6 group to speed up financial reforms, raising concerns among smaller countries that their national interests could be bulldozed in the name of progress. That's a common thing. Smaller countries are often afraid of the bigger ones, and so they always tend to favor rules that either will guarantee equal rules for everyone or will protect their market. And typically, the smaller countries, so here on the Capital Markets Union, you see that they're quite keen to keep their national silo because they don't want to be bulldozed over by the big French, Italian, German companies, etc., etc. In another area, smaller countries tend to be very, very keen on strong anti-competition law. Not anti-competition, on competition law and antitrust rules. Why? Because they don't want the whole spiel about European champions to emerge, because if it becomes a free-for-all in terms of state aid, smaller countries cannot compete with the money that the Germans and the French can put on the table to support their companies. And so the French and German companies would just walk over the Slovenian companies, the Austrian companies, etc., etc. Where was I? Okay. So it's likely there will be more clarity on this approach after the next EU Leaders Summit in March, where the ICU, so the Capital Markets Union, will be discussed. In the meantime, E6 countries are keeping up the pressure on their fellow finance ministers. France has pushed for the supervision proposal to be discussed at the ministerial level in March, a request that smaller countries oppose. We want to make sure that we are the pacemakers, said French Minister Roland Lescure in defense of the E6. Europe is very good at moving well, we also need to make it better at moving faster, and that's what we're gonna do. The idea of the E6 is kind to put pressure and the ends cooperation. The idea that a small group can go ahead is the idea for the big member states to say, hey guys, you can either come in now, or we're going to go ahead in any case without you, and you're not going to like it because we're going to do things our way without taking your views into account. So there's a bit of a FOMO, fear of missing out, and it pressures the other countries to, oh shit, I can't block this thing because they will do an ends cooperation without me. So it would be better if I find a compromise with them or go with them in the ends cooperation so that my interests are a bit protected rather than letting them do whatever they want on the side and that ultimately lose out of it. So it's also a manner to put pressure on the other countries that are currently against it. So yeah, be sure that this topic will be again a common one in this mandate. And that was the final article I have for today. We've been good on time, so if you have question on this or anything else, you can go ahead. We can make a quick FAQ or whatever. So feel free to ask any questions. If you have any, if you don't have any, that's no big deal. We can go on the weekend and have drinks earlier. No complaints on my side. And otherwise, I'll do my conclusions if you have no questions or whatever. Up, checking quickly. Bang, tack. Let me also check my agenda. So it's to grow big companies, to not be as reliant on the US or other countries' big companies. Yes, it's to facilitate European companies to grow and not rely on US money or be bought by US companies. But yeah, that's the thinking of the Capital Markets Union, is how to improve the capacity for European startups to grow and gather capital, basically. And it's not just big companies. It's first actually big companies are not the primary target. It's more startups, because big companies, they're already established, they already have money, they have already a capacity because of their brand to gather money relatively easily. It's startups that they need big amount of money initially, even if they're not well established, so they're kind of a risky bet. And right now they don't easily get the ability to have access to a large amount of money, especially if it's like very ambitious startups like that. And so then they go on the US market. So it's not necessarily like the big ones already. Yeah, it helps startups to grow and eventually potentially become big companies. Indeed. It feeds into basically the trauma of the Europeans that we lost in the race around the companies that make the internet, the companies that are making AI, the companies that make telco, etc., etc. So they're like, oh shit! Like every time there's a new wave of innovation, where you have a lot of startups that are going into the field. Even if we are very good as Europeans in research, in developing innovative ideas, when it comes to make them commercial products and making companies, they don't have the financial means to actually grow and then become a big company that could then compete with the Americans, with the Chinese, etc., because they can't easily get the finances to grow as startups. So that's part of that of the thinking. So it's also international competition. You have no question? Well, that's fine. You have no question, but you don't want me to enjoy the weekend. Ah, salaud. Betrayed by my own community. In correlation to France's will to be strategically independent from other powers? Yes and no. I mean, I don't necessarily see that as a consequence of strategic autonomy, although the French will have that a bit in mind. It's more a question of industrial policy in the case of France, most likely, in the sense that it will be about we need to develop European champions. Like when it comes to economy and industry, France is you have the strategic autonomy, but it's also about having the European champions. We want to develop the next Nokia, the next Google, etc., that can compete with the others. Oui, ça parle anglais ce soir. C'est pas un test. Pardon, sorry, I switched to English. Normalement, le vendredi, on est en français, mais cette semaine, on a inversé parce que j'avais Eurogamer, donc le stream en français était mardi. Et vendredi, du coup, aujourd'hui, là, je fais le stream en anglais. Donc, mais on devra terminer. La semaine prochaine, on repasse à un programme normal, donc le vendredi sera en français. Désolé, mais voilà, c'est pour ça qu'on parle anglais aujourd'hui. So, sorry, what were I saying? Yeah, so France is not only a question of strategic autonomy, it's also a question of the European champions. And the idea of European champions for France, it's, of course, French companies have potentially an edge there because they tend to be those who have the support, the backbone to potentially then go on the international market. So that's also why the smaller countries are not so keen on that. Yes, go on the Discord. Speaking of which, I'll give you the Discord. That way, it's done. You have the Discord, the Twitter and everything. You have the replay. You have the program of the week and everything. You just have to click. You know how it works. All right. If there's no more questions at the moment, I will slowly conclude by telling you what's the program for next week, which is going to be fairly simple because normally I'm double checking it should be a normal week. So with the normal schedule, let me open my agenda, at least my professional one, to see if I have anything that prevents me from streaming at the normal hours. No. So we will be in a normal streaming schedule, meaning stream on Tuesday at 7 p.m. In English for the news review, and stream on Friday at 5 p.m. in French for the news review. So we are in the back in the normal schedule. This week was a bit all around because I have Eurogamer, so when I have a week on Eurogamer, the next day I stream in French. Hence the reverse one. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. As usual, if you like what you saw, well, do follow the channel. If you have a Prime lying around, do toss a coin to your to your streamer. Sorry, I'm tired as well. Thanks again to Tikanis for the sub. And yeah, I will see you next week. You have the link to the socials. And yeah, I think we're good. I think we can go on a weekend, a well-deserved weekend. We can have drinks, we can relax, we can play video games, we can watch TV or whatever you want to do. And I will see you next week on Tuesday or on Friday. Have a good one, guys. See you next week.